Today I want to share one of my clients' stories so that you guys can see firsthand how he resolved premature ejaculation and also get a better understanding of what it is that I mean when I say that our problem that we think that we have is not our actual problem and there's something much bigger at play. You'll also get to see how his perception changes from the beginning of our session compared to the end when we resolve this issue. My name is Austin Salas. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist and I help men overcome porn addiction, premature ejaculation, and any other type of sexual issue that they may be experiencing that's affecting their lives. A few weeks ago, I had a client come to me and say that he's not able to satisfy his partner sexually. He's feeling a lot of anxiety leading up to sex, and this is causing him to ejaculate very quickly. The result of it all is that he's putting an immense amount of pressure on himself. So as the session continues and we begin to dig deeper as to what is actually causing him to put pressure on himself, we start coming across what I like to call these subconscious knots. It's an overall conceit, an opinion, or a belief that we have about ourselves. And so the knot that comes up for him was the belief that he feels he's not good enough and he's constantly comparing himself to others. And so the way that he justifies whether or not he's worthy, whether or not he's good enough, is by satisfying his partner. Interesting, right? The more that we continue digging deeper into the issue, something else comes up. So we continue in this session and really begin to understand where this pressure originates from. And as we expect in all of our sessions, another knot comes up. This time it's connected to his mother. You see, all of his life, he watched his mother struggle financially. And at a young age, he felt a lot of pressure to do what he could to help provide for the household. Keyword here, provide. So this is what I mean by our problem is not the actual problem. The pressure that he's feeling to satisfy his partner is actually very familiar to him because he's felt this pressure ever since he was a young boy. So the more that we dug into this feeling, this pressure, this feeling of not good enough, it finally begins to click for him. So we get to the point in our session where he begins asking himself, is this pressure actually doing me any good, or is it causing me to suffer unnecessarily? And it's when he comes face to face with this reality that he has a breakthrough. There's a shift in perception, and that's when the healing takes place. It's the realization that I'm doing this to myself and I don't have to anymore. So once we resolve that feeling of not good enough and the constant pressure he puts on himself, I asked him about that partner that he's having difficulty satisfying sexually. And this man tells me, even though I struggle sometimes with her, she's reassured me that she doesn't even care that much about the performance. It doesn't even bother her at all, actually. That she's actually more focused on the fact that they're willing to open up to each other. And I said, well, isn't that interesting? You never mentioned that before. And then I asked him about his mother and the financial struggles that he says that they always talk about. And he says, my mom will mention these struggles and then she'll make jokes about them. So I think that I've been unconsciously taking on this worry, taking on this imaginary pressure of her financial struggles and that situation, when in reality, it's actually manageable and it's not that big of a problem. So it just goes to show, I want you guys to see and understand what's happening. When we are focusing on our problem, on what's wrong in our lives, we will distort all of our perceptions. We will bend our perceptions in an attempt to justify and reinforce the quote-unquote problem. Essentially, all we did was look at this problem from all angles, and by putting our attention on it, we allow for these subconscious knots that are associated with the problem to come up, and just by doing that, they begin to untangle themselves. Thus, I begin to look at my quote-unquote problem through a different lens. So at the beginning of the session, what looked like a big problem or an obstacle turns out not to be that bad at all. I'm just making it much bigger than it has to be. And in realizing this, my client goes from all of this pressure to no pressure at all. And what's the final result of not putting any more pressure on yourself and having to satisfy and perform for your partner? He messaged me and told me that he's having the best sex of his life. Now, just to recap, did we give him a technique? No. Did we tell him to follow some 90-day program and do all of these exercises? No. Did I tell him to do some Tantric or do some Taoist breathing techniques. No. All that we did was facilitate a change in perception. So there you have it, guys. If you like this content, please like, please share, subscribe, and I'm always here open to answer any questions and to just give all the feedback, all the knowledge, and all of the understanding that I have of how we can resolve these issues as quickly as possible. I don't think that we have to do so many extracurricular things to resolve our issue. If we can just pay attention and understand ourselves at very deep levels, we can resolve anything.